To really get a handle on one of the biggest financial crimes out there, we've got to start with one of the most notorious criminals in history.
All right, so let's talk about Al Capone. We all know the name, right? This guy ran a massive criminal empire, but when the feds finally cornered him, what do you think they got him on? It wasn't murder, it wasn't extortion, nope, it was tax evasion.
And that, right there, raises this giant question. The proof of all his other crimes, the actual money, it just wasn't there. Poof, gone. So, where did it all go?
I mean, the amount of money we're talking about here is just staggering. His whole operation, everything from illegal gambling to bootlegging, was pulling in almost $100 million a year.
Just to put that in perspective for you, that is $1.4 billion in today's money, every single year. That's a mind-blowing amount of cash that just seemed to vanish into thin air.
So how on earth did he pull that off? Well, the answer is in the very trick that gave this crime its famous name.
And this is just brilliant, really. Capone and his crew would funnel all that illegal cash into totally legitimate, cash-heavy businesses. And the classic example is laundromats. See, when you mix the dirty money with all the clean cash from real customers, it becomes impossible to trace who really owns what. And boom, that's exactly where we get the term money laundering.
So at its core, that's what money laundering is. It's the whole process of taking dirty money, money from crime, and cleaning it. The goal is to make it look legit so it can be spent and invested in the regular economy without anyone batting an eye.
Okay, so the schemes today are way, way more complicated than Capone's laundromats. But you know what? Most of them still follow the same classic three-step formula. Let's break down how that cycle works.
All right, this whole process really boils down to 3 main steps. The first one is called placement. This is all about just getting that physical dirty cash into the financial system. And honestly, this is the most dangerous part for the criminals. I mean, think about it. How do you deposit millions of dollars in cash without setting off a million alarm bells? Okay, so once the money's in the system, they move on to step 2. And this is the really complicated part, layering. This is where they go to work creating this crazy, tangled web of transactions. The whole point is to hide where that money came from in the first place.
Yeah, the layering stage is where all the magic, or, the deception really happens. They'll do things like bounce the funds between dozens of different accounts, or they'll buy and sell super expensive stuff like fancy cars, art, or real estate, anything to muddy the waters and hide that paper trail. And casinos, oh man, they are a classic tool. A criminal can walk in, buy a ton of chips with dirty cash, gamble just a little bit, and then cash out. And just like that, they can claim the money as clean winnings. Right, so after they've made the money's origins pretty much untraceable, it's time for the final step. Integration. This is the home stretch. The now clean money gets reintroduced into the legitimate economy. Maybe it shows up as revenue for a fake company or as an investment in a real business. At this point, to an outsider, the money looks totally clean.
But here's the thing. As slick as this whole cycle is, the idea of hiding your wealth, that is not new. Not at all. The methods have definitely changed, but the basic crime has been around for, centuries.
I mean, this has been a problem forever. You had ancient merchants hiding their riches from tax collectors. You had pirates trying to figure out how to spend their stolen loot without getting caught. But the modern fight against it really ramped up in 1986 when the U.S. officially made money laundering its own specific federal crime. And today, the whole game has gone digital. Criminals are using cryptocurrencies, offshore banks, and the darknet to try and stay one step ahead of the law.
And you can't overstate how huge that 1986 law was. Before that, prosecutors had to prove the crime that made the money dirty in the first place. Remember Capone's tax evasion? Well, after this law, they just had to prove that the money was being hidden. This was a total game changer for law enforcement trying to take down big criminal operations like drug cartels.
But even with all these new laws and tools, money laundering is still a massive part of global crime. And it's happening on a scale that is, it's almost impossible to even wrap your head around.
So nobody knows the exact number, it's just too hidden. But most organizations that track this stuff estimate that the amount of money being laundered globally every single year is in the hundreds of billions of dollars. I mean, that is just an astronomical figure.
And you know what's really changed over the years? It's who's doing the laundering. Back in the day, we thought of gangsters, guys like Capone. But today, some of the biggest, most high-profile cases have involved not just individual criminals, but major household-name financial institutions and even government officials.
And that kind of leaves us with this final and pretty unsettling question to think about. If hundreds of billions of dollars in dirty money are successfully getting cleaned and pushed into our economy every single year, then how much of the legitimate world that we see around us is actually built on a criminal foundation?